Hey friends, so have you tried out the Puff HTV yet? That's what we're doing today. We're going to make 3 different projects and we're going to walk through 6 things that you need to know before you use this product. And so make sure that you stick around with me for all 3 projects because we're going to walk through the different things as we go. We're going to talk about designs. Not all designs are created equal when it comes to Puff HTV. We're going to talk about how to apply it to the mat. It's not the same as normal HTV. We're going to talk about material choice and pre-care. There's a few things that you need to know before you pick whatever you're going to put this Puff HTV onto. We're going to talk about how to press it, and guys, there are three big things that are different from normal HTV and Puff HTV, so you want to make sure that you get all 3 of those so you have that perfect puff. We're also going to talk about how to care for your item after you've applied the Puff HTV to it. And finally, we're going to talk about whether or not you can layer Puff HTV. We'll see. Okay guys, let's hop into it. And by the way, if you are new here, you are crafting with Kim Byers. Okay, so here we are on the craft table, and we are going to be able to use any Cricut to create our puff projects, and we are going to be able to put that onto sweatshirts, tank tops, koozies, anything that you can put HTV onto. So first of all, let's pop into Cricut Design Space and talk about our design. So we're going to make 3 different projects. We're going to make a sweatshirt with a very large collegiate font. We're going to make a tank top with smaller cursive fonts, and then we are also going to make a koozie for graduation. So let's go ahead and look at our mama sweatshirt. First of all, I have a free cut for you down in the description. I wasn't able to find a free version of this out there, and it's very popular right now. So I wanted you guys to be able to make this exact sweatshirt. I'll go ahead and tell you this one turned out really well. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our design. First of all, it is Puff HTV, which means you have to mirror image that design. Next up, we have to choose our material, but Puff HTV is not in Cricut Design Space. So just go to the iron-on section and select iron-on, just general iron-on, and then we'll go back to the craft table and cut our material. As a reminder, first project, we're doing a large design with a hollow font. So we are going to go ahead and cut our material, and it is a little bit different than it would be with normal HTV. Normal HTV, and you see this in Cricut Design Space in the little instructions that it gives you, it tells you to cut it with the shiny side down. That is not going to be the case with Puff vinyl. With Puff HTV, you are going to apply it shiny side up, and if you're ever confused about that, just peel it away at the corner and you're going to be able to tell that the shiny side is actually your material and not your liner. So I actually cut multiple colors of this Puff HTV, and for whatever reason the blue just refused to lay down, and I even cut the others on this same mat, but I use a brayer to get all the bubbles out, and then I just put a little tape at the edges. Now Puff HTV cuts like normal HTV, it weeds like normal HTV. It's just when we get to the pressing part where it's very different. Now that our Puff HTV is weeded, let's look at the material itself. So our instructions are going to tell us that there are 4 different things that you would typically not see. Our temperature is much lower, our pressure, there we go, our pressure is much higher, and our peel is hot. That is not a normal HTV. And not only that, did you notice it was only a 10-second press? In addition to those differences, there's 2 other very important tips. One, you have to do the pre-press. You absolutely have to do the pre-press with Puff because you have to get all of the moisture out of that fabric. And I don't mean 5 seconds of pre-press or 10 seconds of pre-press. We're going to do 40 full seconds of pre-press. And not only that, you're going to need pressure. So with Puff, you absolutely have to have a firm surface to put this on. So that means no squishy Cricut mat. You're going to have to use a butcher block or something like that if you don't have the auto press, the Cricut auto press, or if you don't have like a normal like big clamshell heat press. So what I did is I just grabbed a butcher block, and then I'm going to use my easy press with no pressing mat. After the pre-press and letting it cool completely, I'm just going to edit my design just slightly. So the little heart, I didn't actually want it to be up near the word mama. I was going to maybe put it on my sleeve or something like that. I just thought it would be a fun little addition. Next, we'll make sure that our design is centered. Reduce your temperature and your seconds to 10 seconds, making sure that it is truly cool down to that temperature, and then apply a lot of pressure, guys, a ton of pressure, and don't forget hot peel. Isn't it gorgeous? It turned out so good. Okay, so just to recap, we did one color, one layer, large design, and the font was hollow, and it worked beautifully. Now for our second project, we are going to use 2 colors of puff and an everyday mesh, and we're actually going to try this whole layering thing. So we'll see if we're going to be able to layer the puff vinyl. Now let's weed our designs. I have not used mesh before, so this is my first time. Didn't even think about the little, it actually having cuts in it. But then we just weed that like normal, and then we would weed our puff like normal as well. Okay, so for this design, we're going to use a tank top, and we are going to be testing 2 things, right? So we're using a very whimsical font in puff vinyl, and we're also going to be layering a second puff on top of an everyday. And so we've added an extra layer of complexity with the mesh, but I kind of wish I had done this with a regular everyday HTV, but here we go. So I really think one of the most important things when you're going to layer this is to not confuse what you're doing with the puff, what you're doing with the everyday. Everyday is treated very different, right? So we do need the pressing mat underneath it. We do need the higher temperature. We do need a longer press. We don't have to have as much pressure. And so when you're doing these, just make sure that you treat the everyday the way that it should. Don't try to skimp on that time, because then it's not going to adhere as well, and it may very well wash, out after a couple of washes. So make sure that you treat everyday HTV like everyday HTV, and that you treat puff HTV like it should be. And just remember, part of that is a cool peel. So once I pressed the everyday, I went ahead and set up to press both the puff at the same time. So I pressed the white and the blue at the exact same time. And in hindsight, I wish I had done them separately. I think that I would have just been able to get a better even pressure if I had pressed, the white and then pressed the blue. And the other thing is if I had to do this over again, I think that I would have used a solid everyday, because with the mesh, there are those tiny little holes in it. And I feel like it might have, kept the blue puff from getting as much pressure all the way down as it did with the white. I've heard some say that if your puff doesn't do as well as you want it to because of moisture, you can give it another press and try to take that moisture out. But this is not recommended, guys, because you are going to be pushing down on that puff one more time. But if your shirt is just you feel totally ruined, give it a whirl. Can't hurt. But all in all, I think it turned out pretty darn cute. Okay, to recap, you can layer with everyday. I wouldn't recommend glitter or mesh, and try to press only one. Next up, we're going to make a koozie for graduation, and we're going to go back to that font that we used with that larger collegiate font. So my purpose for doing this project is to do something on a much smaller scale. So we're using that nice font that we used on the t-shirt or the sweatshirt, but it is much smaller. So we're testing what small designs do with puff. And one thing we didn't test today, but I do want to share with you, don't create large scale designs like a 4x4 or 5x5 butterfly. That butterfly is going to turn into just a puffy blob. And if you do put detail in it, kind of like it is with the font, so you have the detail, the interior detail, that would be great, except to make sure it's not intricate detail, because that can also puff up and then diminish, sort of like the A did here in this design, and the tassel did. So you can see that the interior of the A is no longer visible and the tassel is no longer separate. Okay, a quick recap of what we learned today. When it comes to designs, use larger font, maybe even hollow font, and use puff for details. When it comes to applying it to the mat, make sure that you are shiny side up, which is not the same as normal HTV. When you're choosing materials, no nylons, and make sure that you get all the moisture out before you press. Also, when it comes to pressing, it is completely different. You want a hot peel, you want less heat and more pressure. And when it comes to care, make sure that you wait 24 hours before you wash it, and then you wash it inside out. And if you are going to layer, no glitter, no mesh, use everyday iron-on only. Okay guys, so I hope that that taught you a lot. I hope you're gonna make some beautiful puff projects, and I will see you in the next video.